All right, well, we're 3 minutes past the 11 o'clock hour, so I will go ahead and we can kick it off and get started. So our original flow has changed just a little bit, Mary, from what we originally told you. So we thought it might be helpful. It's been a little bit now since we've all been together. And so we thought it would be helpful to do a quick refresher of the process of how we got here today. So Mary, before you get started on your presentation, I'm actually going to turn it over to Lori to give us just a really brief introduction reminder of how we got here today. And then Mary will speak. She'll do her presentation. She has about 30 minutes to do that. And then we'll have some time at the end for the Leadership Council we'll have some discussion and answer any questions or things like that. So
Kelsey, it looks like I need to be able to have access to share screen.
you should be good now.
Okay, if you'll give me a thumbs up once it's in full presentation mode.
There you go.
All right. We're so excited. Last time we talked to the Leadership Council was in December, and we said these think tank presentations are coming, and Kelsey and Landon and I have been hitting the pavement, meeting with people to get prepared for this first one. And so just a reminder of why we're here. So today we are here so that you can hear directly from the state leaders who are working on the identified healthy eating, active living, and healthy weight state priority initiatives. And we'll take some time to discuss how the Leadership Council can help to advance these priority initiatives. But just remember, we're not an implementing body. We're here to collectively work together to support and advance and move these things further, faster together. And so have that in mind as we go through today. Just a little bit of how we got to this point. We all are aware of our state health improvement plan, which has a focused priority on chronic health conditions. And within that plan, there are goals and objectives already set. And Healthy Palmetto serves as that state coalition of organizations that's really looking at the healthy eating, active living, and healthy weight components of the state health improvement plan. And so again, our purpose is to unify and mobilize those healthy eating and active living efforts that create equitable opportunities for all South Carolinians to achieve a healthy weight. So also in the plan, the objective that we most align with is to decrease the percent of adults who are obese in South Carolina, trying to get down to 31.5%. So as a Leadership Council, we monitor this as new information comes out, and we just in December looked at where we currently are, which is at 36.2%, not where we want to be, which is why it's important for us to put focus on and really look at these priorities and how can we advance them, because somebody's got to do it, right? In South Carolina, we also have a unique data set where we can monitor the health-related fitness data of our school students. And so that begins to give us some predictions of those adult obesity rates. So for the last year or so, we've been really diving into the Trust for America's Health State of Obesity report. And it's such a long list of recommendations that states should be focused on. And so we've been narrowing that down and chipping away at it. And just for the Leadership Council, in December, when we left y'all, we had a list of 13. And today you'll see a shorter list of 8 priorities that these state leaders decided they wanted our help and wanted to go forward with us. And so we will talk about these, how we got to 8 from 13 at our February 3rd Leadership Council meeting. So no worries there. Hold your questions about any of that until we have that meeting on the 3rd. Also know that all of the presentations that are going to be happening over the next week or so, we're open arms accepting all that they're asking us for. So there's no decisions to be made today or anything like that. It's just to sit back and listen. And so today you're going to hear about trail development and maintenance and the group that's working on that. But I did want you to see how that then interacts with the others that we'll be going forward with. And so anything in white are the ones that we are carrying forward with. If there's something in yellow, that means there was a little tweak to it. Or if it's scratched out, that means for mainly for capacity or timing reasons, they've just decided not to go forward with this at this time. So we've got one in each of the categories that we've been talking about. And so that'll be interesting to see how it all sort of works together, and collectively we can help move these things forward. So this is just your schedule for the next week. Mary is first on our docket, and so you'll be hearing from Mary Rowe and her group in just a minute about trail development and maintenance. Then we have 5 more meetings, and so we do encourage you to attend as many as you can, because it'll just give you such a wealth of information. Kelsey, Landon, and I have just really enjoyed hearing from these state leaders, and we want you to have that same opportunity. And so, what is your chore for today? Your chore is to listen and, be present and listen, like we always encourage. Put on that Healthy Palmetto Leadership Council hat. So how are we going to use this information, learn from these state leaders, and unify and mobilize efforts? Put on your organizational hat. We've been talking since we started coming together. It's not just about you and your position, but how does your organization fit with this work? And then also, sometimes we forget we serve on coalitions and task force and committees. So put that hat on too. And if there's connections that you can make, really be thinking about that. And so at the end of Mary's presentation, we've got 2 questions for our Leadership Council. What are you still curious about around trail development and maintenance? And what ideas are generated from this? So I will now stop sharing and turn it over to Mary.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. I'm Mary Rowe. I'm the Executive Director of the Palmetto Trail, and I'm here as part of a coalition. Several years ago, a group of us did get together because we had identified that there was a lot of trail activity happening in our state, but there was really no single messaging or group that was established that the community could draw from to find out about trails. Organizations like yourself or municipalities, and the list goes on and on about how many groups really needed a central source to come to learn about trails, opportunities to expand trail systems, and also how do we link the current trail systems that exist and really make a connected sort of trail system for the state of South Carolina. So when this opportunity came to us, we jumped on it. The group that was working on a sort of a coalition, we regrouped ourselves, and we are now called the Healthy Palmetto Trails Coalition. And our focus, again, is to build a South Carolina trail coalition community. We feel that we could be the leaders right now in terms of establishing the framework for a coalition. And what would that framework look like, and why we're asking you for funding for this framework. We believe that we will need a sort of a strategic plan. And that strategic plan is really bigger than just the group that we currently have engaged. We feel that we would need to retain an outside expert to kind of come in, sit with this coalition, and really establish goals and objectives for what a trail community would look like, what a coalition that houses the data behind all the trail systems in South Carolina. How do we take that data and get it back into the community so that the information can engage people in the community? There can be programming established in the community. And so it's really exciting to think that we could have this coalition, have one source for the data of existing trails and also potential trails to be built, also offer guidance on how to apply to build trails. There are so many variables of different trail systems. And then going back and engaging you all, because you have your pulse on a lot of different groups in the community from a health perspective. How do we bring it out, and how do we partner to bring South Carolinians out to actually engage in exercise and utilize trails, not only for the mental and physical support that it gives people when they're engaged on trails, but also trails can also be a way of commuting. We know for a fact that some of these greenways, the Spanish Moss Trail or other paved type of trails, the Swamp Rabbit Trail, are actually ways in which people can get to work. So it's really multifaceted. But to get back to the coalition and what the coalition would do with the funding, and that is that we would convene all the various stakeholders in the community that have a little bit of a role in trail building or trail maintenance. And we would convene this at a state trails coalition, bring people all together to have the conversation about the goals and objectives of what a comprehensive trail system in the state of South Carolina would look like, and also the data or the information that other groups, municipalities, healthcare providers, just the list goes on of how they would use this data and how it would be beneficial to the state. So some of the people that I mentioned in this coalition is the Palmetto Trail, and we are South Carolina's statewide trail experts. SEPRT, who's been building trails in all of our great state parks. Then we have the Palmetto Cycling Coalition, which is a advocacy group for safer bike lanes, safer sidewalks, really advocating for that walk bike community. And then we have our Kids in Parks, who has come into South Carolina as a partner. They have established phenomenal interactive programming at a number of our state parks. Over the last year, their programming has really outperformed many of their other Kids in Parks programs statewide in other states along the Mid-Atlantic coast. And so this group really touches on every element of trails, from building to advocacy to programming, and with a single goal is to expand the ability to get South Carolina out on trails and support the health and wellness component of many of the initiatives that you need. You need both, healthy eating. You need good opportunities to recreate. And so we'd like to be able to bring everybody together to make it a sort of a singular message that's going out to the state of South Carolina. So why do we feel we need to exist? Well, we believe that we will have a combined focus. And I think that's been needed in South Carolina. I think we recognize that everybody has been doing phenomenal work, but we need a combined focus, and we need to be able to really take all this information and house it under one roof. And that is a combined focus for healthy living and a combined focus for exercise and magnifying that message. We believe that we can increase the number of people engaged in healthy outdoor activities. And by doing a coordinated approach, I think that we will have the resources that many of other groups are looking for, that we will be that resource for them. So What is our approach? Our approach is to first retain an outside professional to come and sit with the coalition partners that I've mentioned and really work out a strategic plan for a statewide trail plan. We'll align that plan with active living and support Healthy Palmetto core initiatives. We will also organize, upon the completion of this strategic plan, a statewide walk bike day summit to introduce this plan and really educate those that attend how to maximize the coalition and how to engage in the strategic plan. And then from there, we see that we would be the facilitators to organize more regional based walk bike summits, more smaller summits that municipalities can host in their own communities. So those are the kind of the four approaches that we are going to take. The goals of our strategic plan is as follows. We hope to increase diversity of the users or user in communities. We do understand that there are often barriers that don't allow or people aren't comfortable going out on trails. So we really need to focus on those barriers and breaking them down. And we really would need all of you to kind of help those in those areas that we know people are not comfortable going out and exercising and being on trails. So that would be one, is to break down those barriers. Another is to expand and advocate for the existing trails. Let people know what actually does exist and how those trails weave throughout the state. We would like to, and again, I want to emphasize connectivity. I think that's a word that is often used in trails. We have some amazing trails, but how can we actually connect them? So the Palmetto Trail in itself, when connected, will be a 500-mile trail system, but that trail is, the Palmetto Trail is not far from the Swamp Rabbit Trail. How would we look at connecting some really amazing, more greenway systems to nature-based trails? So the coalition would really look at all the trails and have a plan and have a discussion, and also talk about funding as to how we might connect all these trails that exist. We would expand what we currently have. We have a small database that does exist of trails, but we would really expand that database. That database would really help, I think, whether it be a hospital association or a municipality, but being able to actually, from a hospital standpoint, tap into the data of trails. And one of the initiatives with kids in parks is for doctors to begin to write prescriptions for trails. But a lot of, unfortunately, there's not a lot of information that is housed on one place that a lot of healthcare providers could actually look into and begin to advocate and prescribe walking on trails or walking on greenways. So we hope we would have that, we would really build upon the data that exists now and make it far more comprehensive. And then there is an element of technicality, a lot of GIS mapping and collecting that GIS mapping work to make a master trail map for the state. And that obviously would be ongoing. New trails are being built. So that also is an important element to trail maintenance or trail building, is the GIS mapping component of that. And so we would try to find and work with the universities. There are a lot of students that need in this field experience. So we hope we could tap into some interns, keep our costs down, but it would be an ongoing internship opportunity for mapping. So additional activities that we feel our South Carolina Trails Coalition would do is we would also seek grant funding, because so many of us in this coalition are dependent on grants. I think sharing and partnering on grant opportunities is really important and crucial. I think everybody recognizes today that grants are not really that single application. We really have to bring in other partners. And it really is beneficial when we're writing and applying for grants that we know what the right hand and the left hand are doing in the trail world. So I think that is really important, that we would help seek grant funding and be a source for opportunities for other municipalities or other organizations to apply for grants to build more trails. We would be the coalition that would maintain the SouthCarolinaTrails.net database. It does exist, SouthCarolinaTrails.net. It needs a lot of work, but we do have it. And so we would expand upon that. We would make it always current. And so we would house and be responsible for that. We would also try to, as I said, retain the internships or the volunteers to help with collecting the data and making sure that it's all current. We would be the organizers behind the statewide Walk Bike Summit that we would hold every year, and bringing experts together. And it's sort of a think tank opportunity once a year for everybody to come together. And we would maintain a public relations messaging campaign statewide to encourage improved health through active exercise on all types of trails. So those are some of the types of initiatives that we see this coalition being responsible for. So let me just again, I think go point by point. What this group feels, what a statewide trail coalition and coordination would look like. Number one, we would build the state trails community. Number two, we would promote trails that are sustainable. Number three, we would foster resources to advocate for expanded use of existing trails. Number four, we would make new resources available to the trails community. And five, remove trail barriers and make trails more accessible. So at that, I think I'm done with my presentation. You know, we're just very excited to be able to really bring forward a more comprehensive plan for trails. COVID has certainly shown us the importance of what trails have done for the wellness, both physically and mentally. Our state park trails, the Palmetto Trail, were overwhelmed by the number of people coming out to during COVID. Many of them were new to trails, so that was very encouraging. And so we want to keep this momentum going. We want to keep trails in the forefront of the people of South Carolina. And we also want to influence policy change. I think we really need to identify that we can put the messaging out there, but we need our leaders in this state to embrace what trails do. And so we hope to influence policy change also when it comes to funding trails and developing trails, developing more trails, and then also how important it is that there is good, solid programming behind trails to really engage the communities. I think what most important I'd like to convey is that we feel that we need to be sustainable, and we need some funding to start that sustainability. And I think this coalition has been a much needed resource for many years now as the trail community has grown, and how important trails are to not only in South Carolina, but across the state.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing all of that, for being here today. So I know we have a couple of other people in today's meeting that are a
Right.
part of the Trails community. So
Yes.
could we ask Jason and Jim to introduce yourselves, and if there's anything that you would add to Mary's information that she shared today, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Thanks, Kelsey. This is Jim Headley with the Parks and Rec Association, and I, Mary covered it really, really well. I think we have a definite opportunity because of COVID that has really shown the light on specifically outdoors, but specifically with trails. And I think this comes at a really, really great time. I think that we can coalesce all the trail groups, the owners basically, but then that whole message eventually with that whole messaging, and as Mary said, really bringing trails to the forefront to our elected leaders, because I've had many discussions with them up at the State House, and they all are like goo-gooing, gagaing all over trails, right? But they're not putting their money where their mouth is. So I think that if we could somehow, through this coalition, being able to, really, synthesize and get a direct message out there, and have that same message, similar to like what we're doing with Healthy Palmetto, with that a very similar message going out from different groups, I think will then start drawing some attention. Oh, that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is, that, because some people trails, and I think Mary mentioned this earlier, trails mean different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to be all inclusive in this, in that we would have, like trails around a ballpark, which that's what a lot of our folks do, as well as trails throughout the city. A lot of our cities now are becoming, they're like, well, wait a minute, we need to engage, like North Augusta was one of the first planned trails in a city. And they've done a wonderful job with it. We're getting other folks like, Rock Hill's jumping on that. Spartanburg County, as I mentioned, I think in our last meeting, received $23 million, up in the upstate. That's a huge trail. But so we're trying to, make it where it's accessible to no matter your comfort level with trails. So if it's just that walk around a ballpark, in your neighborhood, that's cool. That's great. You're getting out on a trail. And hopefully that might lead to something else. And, bringing Jason into the fold and he can go next. Well, actually, that's going to really, I think, accentuate, more the family aspect, and starting, getting a little bit more data on trail users. I think that is an exciting part of this as well. So I'll let Jason go next.
Very good. Thanks, Jim. I think Mary and Jim said it all already in terms of what our group is aiming to do. Mary did a fantastic presentation about what we've been talking about over the last month or two. I'm Jason Uros. I'm with the Kids in Parks program, and I'm actually sitting in North Carolina right now. And so thanks for including us in the Healthy Palmetto opportunity, and for including us in the leadership of the South Carolina sort of Trails Coalition that we're forming. Our program works with park partners all across the country to convert pre-existing hiking trails into family-friendly hiking trails through the installation of signs and brochures and electronic activities that turn what we say as an ordinary hike into a fun-filled, discovery-packed adventure. And so a lot of families, when they go out onto a trail, maybe they don't know what to do when they get there, and it's scary and it's new, and I don't know the birds and I don't know the trees, and is that poison ivy? I'm not sure. But if you have some sort of guides that are available for you to use that convert that experience into an adventure, and you're learning the names of the trees and the birds and the flowers and the ferns, you start to develop a meaningful connection with those resources, and you start to see the value of those resources and how that they can impact your life positively. And what happens through our program is that families can register their activities through our website. They get prizes in the mail. And the more hikes they register, the more prizes they get, which incentivizes them to want to visit more and more trail locations so that they can continue to earn those rewards. And then in the end, they develop healthy habits. They don't need the prizes anymore. I just like hiking at these 10 places that I go to. And now I go to them all the time, and I want to go find more and more places to go. I'm going to go to this state park now. I'm going to go to this national park. I'm going to go to the ball field, and just being in parks becomes a part of their routines. And so we're happy to be here. We have a bunch of data, as Jim said, about our success so far in South Carolina. It's pretty unprecedented. We've launched a program in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina Foundation and the state parks with Healthy Palmetto, Palmetto Conservation Fund with the Palmetto Trail, and then several city, county parks and national parks throughout the state. And they've just gone lights out in terms of the registrations that families have done. I'll just quickly spill the beans and say 5 of the top 10 trails in our program last year were South Carolina trails. And we have 230 trails in 15 states.
Wow.
From the East Coast to the West Coast. And so they've really been taken up by South Carolinians, and it sort of shows that if you build it, they will come. And so we're here to help be a part of that movement.
Yeah, and I just want to add, there is data that shows that if a child is not introduced to the outdoors by the age of 3, they actually become fearful. And so again, we're doing something here with our partnership with Jason's organization. Is we're actually building a generation, hopefully the next generation, to be caretakers for conservation, preservation of the outdoors. So it is so important to begin to engage young children in the outdoors and programming. You can build these trails. We want these trails to be used. We want to see everybody out there, and they're free. This is all free to South Carolina. So anyway.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all 3 of you, for just your knowledge and the work you're doing in our state. It is very exciting. Barry, I see you with your hand up. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I put in the chat box a photo of our team out on a nice hike at Spider Woman 2. I want to thank Misty Pearson, a work family member here in CNS, Community Nutrition Services, for getting us out of the office. I tell you, it is a great team builder to get out of the office, become one with Mother Nature, and hit one of the trails. And in 2022, that's something that we plan on doing more. So Misty, I hope you will plan some more events for our team. We had a blast. And if you would, just check out that cool photo I put in the chat box. It was absolutely amazing. We had a blast. So thank you for the presentation. And I didn't know, I plan to visit more trails here in South Carolina. It is so refreshing.
That's a great story. Thank you, Barry. And I feel like you kicked us off answering one of our questions of what ideas does this generate? It reminds me of a time you got out on a trail with your team, and that trails can be a great place to go for team building. So a place that we can encourage our workplaces to utilize as opportunities to take advantage of the trails we have in our state. So let me open it up to the group. Would love to hear those 2 questions that Lori posed at the beginning. And they were, what are you still curious about? And what ideas does this generate? So thinking about the multiple hats that we wear, one as Healthy Palmetto Leadership Council members, but also your organization, as well as any other connections to things like coalitions or just statewide work groups that you're a part of, and how this might fit into some of that work that you're already doing.
I'll speak. So I'm really excited, Mary, to hear all you shared. And I don't know if y'all will be in future presentations, but there will be one later for early care and education that's around our effort to do the same thing in the childcare setting. So my question is, Jim touched on it, that, the COVID really has elevated the importance of getting outdoors. And you're talking trail specific. Do y'all have, or have you given any thought to a coordinated message about just the benefit of being outdoor? Because I see a strong linkage to what we'll be presenting on. And your last comment about connecting children to nature before the age of 3 to reduce fear really is the whole purpose of what we're doing in childcare too. So I think there's a natural connection there. But I think one of the things we've seen is there really needs to be, just in general, a coordinated message about why children, adults, people need to be outdoors. So I just was curious if y'all had given any thought to that, the larger message.
Yeah, I think we absolutely want to move into that messaging. I mentioned that we would have a public relations kind of campaign. And I think that messaging, as Jim again touched upon when he's up at the State House, every representative's like, oh yeah, I love trails, but they're not putting the money behind these trails. And they need to understand exactly what you're saying. The impact that it does have on early childhood education, it's a ripple effect. If we can start getting, the mindset early on, by the time they become adults, it's just ingrained in them. They want to be outside. They want that. So again, I would say that yes, absolutely, that messaging is part of our plan, and identifying messaging that does appeal to different age groups and different segments of the population. And I think this coalition, as we go through a strategic plan, will actually have to identify that messaging and the groups and how we do a bigger messaging. So yes, the answer is yes. And then again, a different messaging. How do we get our elected officials, whether they're here at the State House or just our city councils, to embrace a different mindset and promoting health and wellness and exercise in their communities. And it's a big job, but I think we're moving in the right direction by forming this coalition, which all of us on this coalition come with our expertise. So I think it's really well balanced how we are represented and how we will probably touch many different, organizations across the state.
I know, I'm sorry, our work isn't trail specific, but I do think there's definitely some crossover between some of our partners and how they could help inform some of the messaging for certain populations. So hopefully we'll see that as these presentations progress, the natural linkages between what y'all are doing and what we are doing in childcare.
Yeah, I think that's true, Misty, and I think that's true amongst and most of you on this call know me by now, but the general public doesn't care who owns the property or who but it does matter back home, right? I mean, because Mary's organization is a statewide organization going from, the mountain to the sea with linkages. And hopefully we've had a lot of conversations with some of our county folks and city folks about maybe, trying to hook up with that trail and provide access to the Palmetto Trail. But then there's also the local trails, and whether that be a city or a county, again, there's major differences with funding back home. But then, so at the end of the day, and that's why we love the messaging piece of this. And Misty, you're spot on with that. Is the general public they don't care. They just want their access to a trail and or open space. And so it becomes a bigger deal back home with funding and that kind of stuff, and all that crazy stuff that happens back behind the scenes. But it's just, we're trying, to at least message that it doesn't matter who you are, that you need access to those trails. And no matter the provider of that trail, whether it be city, county, or, a nonprofit like Mary's group, or, looking like Three Rivers Greenway, here in Columbia. We talked about, we would bring those, folks in too, to do an inventory. And as Mary mentioned, that's one of the big things is trying to do this inventory, which we've got a good handle on. But I think that we're just trying to break those barriers down for the general public, so they don't care, because they don't care, and they shouldn't care, right? I mean, it's infuriating that we stand in the way of a lot of and our organization's probably somewhat guilty of that, because we have cities and we have counties, and they all have their boundary lines, and they got their property taxes, and so there is a reason for that. But at the end of the day, no, we can't look at it that way. And so that's why bringing all these groups together is cool, to be able to do that, and to kind of open up a lot of folks' eyes, including a lot of our membership's eyes, a lot of the cities and the counties of, what, it really doesn't matter. It's just about getting the kids outside. So, and if any of you have not read Last Child in the Woods, you need to pick that book up. So I'll leave it with that.
And can I just add, while Jim's saying, that the families don't care, the messaging that you put out there has to change based on the audience that you're talking to. So for our program, it was originally called Healthy Kids, Healthy Parks, but we realized very early on that having a parent be like, let's go be part of the Healthy Kids program, the kids were going to reject that idea, right? Like, they just want to have fun in nature, in parks, and go to the places, and they don't care about the boundary, whether it's a city park, a state park, a national park, a Forest Service site, whatever it may be. They just want to go have that experience. But if you're talking to a county administrator about the importance of trails, you want to talk about how the Greenway enhances the economy and makes livability better, and that enhances the town and people wanting to stay there, right? And if you're talking to the state level, you want to be able to talk about those same types of things, as well as add on physical health benefits, mental health benefits, and the cost savings associated with those things. And then you can go and build onto that for education, for Misty, early childhood care and education, and say kids who play outdoors have better attention restoration. And so when they go back inside the classroom, they can pay better attention to their lessons. They're not as distracted, and therefore, they have a better opportunity to have better educational attainment. And so those messages have to change depending on who you're talking to. And as Mary and Jim were saying, we have a good coalition of folks who have the ear, Jim, of the city county people, the state parks for the state offices, right? Mary for statewide stuff, myself for like the family sort of fun educational stuff that helps to get everybody involved and develop the messages accordingly.
That's great. Thank you, Misty, for your question. And Erica.
So I think my question comment had it aligned with Misty's a lot. So I'm a school wellness consultant. So I work in the world of the school systems and promoting physical activities for school age children. So same thing with Misty. Bree and I will be sharing Monday how we help prioritize school-based physical activity. But we know that physical activity doesn't just happen in the school, but they need opportunities outside the school in the community. So at the state level, something that we're trying to work on is better communicate from the state level to the local level, how schools and communities can work together to find those opportunities. And trails is definitely a perfect example of that. And just side note, if I told my 5-year-old we're going for a walk, he already is complaining about his knees hurting, which he learned from his Nana. But if I tell my 5-year-old we're going to go walk at the river to find tadpoles, he's grabbing his fishing gear. So I know too well about the whole messaging aspect of that. Another idea I had was when you talk about the annual Walk Bike Summit, I know what was Safe Routes to Schools. I know there's not really a state group that does that anymore in South Carolina because of funding, but that could be a way to advocate to promote it at that event, stakeholders who are interested in that active transportation at schools as well. And then another thought, comment, idea I had, and you're probably aware, is that there's some schools that have trails. I'm thinking about the elementary school in Kershaw County, they have a trail, or there's schools that are near trails, like you were talking about, Mary, connectivity. So how do we promote that? So I think the GIS mapping would be really cool. And how do we create that awareness with the families and the schools that are nearby? And then thinking about success stories and how the trails can boost local economy. I feel like Travelers Rest, from what I understand, is a perfect example of that. So how do we share those success stories in the other communities across the state? And then thinking about my sister-in-law who just bought a house in Easley next to the Doodle Trail, that's going to be like the next TR. So it's cool seeing these things happen in the upstate. So again, how do we just take advantage of what's already been successful and get that out there through that messaging that you are talking about?
Yeah, and you've mentioned some great trail systems, and you've touched upon the economic importance for small towns and a lot of rural towns that for example, our Palmetto Trail does go through, and it really does bring some good dollars into some of these smaller towns, and it can change the whole makeup of a town. Travelers Rest is a perfect example of that. And going back to the Bike Walk Summit, I was part of the first organizing the first Bike Walk Summit with Safe Routes to School and the Palmetto Cycling Coalition. We did that in Columbia. So I'm very familiar with, we created the model, and I wish Safe Routes School was still here because they were our voice into the school system. They were fantastic. And I would love to see that program back in South Carolina and active. So again, I'll say, collecting the data on all these trails is the #1 priority. I think first and foremost, we have to have direct people to a source, to the information. And so that doesn't exist right now. So the coalition would put all that information, house it under one place, and begin to create that state trail map. Visual, I mean, I already see it in my mind what it would look like, and there's a cool factor behind it, and I think a picture is, speaks volumes here. So that we would work on also. So I think with Jason on board and his knowledge of how to engage the young people is crucial to this piece when we put the strategic plan together. I don't know if Jason wants to expand on it at all.
You've done great. I think folks that are on board with the idea, and I think the presentation was well put together. And trails are important, and potentially you find yourself in times of current COVID hitting more trails than you did 2 or 3 years ago, and so you'll just realize on your own, like, yeah, this is totally true. And when all the options of the world were sort of taken away, and you couldn't go to the movies, and you couldn't go to dinner or to the mall, it's like, oh, we're gonna go to the parks, and then that became more of a part of your life, even as things started to open back up, and it became something that you wanted to do. And we just want that to happen for more and more people.
Absolutely. And hopefully Healthy Palmetto Leadership Council will be a part of making that a reality in the next few years and beyond that. So thank you again for your time. So we have 8 minutes left. somebody just really is dying to share. We got one more. Sarah, I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, yeah, I have one thing I wanted to say as I was listening to everybody talk, and particularly listening to some of the things that we were saying around fun and being outside, and it not being like, let's go get on the healthy trail, but let's go play. I was thinking about the Play Coalition, and the US Play Coalition, and so many of us on this group participate in that. And then when we start talking about Richard Louv, and I'm like, oh, I've met Richard Louv, I've seen Richard Louv, he's been here. Like, how can we better take this work that the US Play Coalition is doing around framing things in play and emphasizing play, and how they're bringing together these national experts through their We Play chats that happen regularly on Twitter, not just a conference, but the regular things that Stephanie's doing. How can we bring that national expertise to bear within our state? In some ways, it feels like, there's a group of us that know about that and that participate in that, but then why aren't we having that conversation also being shared with our local coalition members? Why are they not hearing directly from Richard Louv at least once a year, or whoever the expert, I'm just continue to bring his name up, but whoever the expert may be in that area? And so I'm kind of throwing it out there as a question, but I'm also kind of throwing it out there as a public charge to myself too, to like reach out to those folks and say, hey, how do we connect with the local coalitions, and just making that a stronger link for our local folks. So yeah, so just kept thinking about that. That's really my biggest comment.
That's great. I mean, I just learned something. So this is already working, right? And how
Oh,
we can, yeah. So, but bringing that information to us as a coalition is really important, and that's what we want to happen. And it's all through partnership. I guess if we could bring some speakers like that, that's where that bike walk summit happened, and just to tell you, the first bike walk summit, we had the mayor of Travelers Rest, we had the mayor of Rock Hill, we had experts from the Swamp Rabbit Trail, from the Spanish Moss Trail. It was a 3-day event actually, and there were a lot of workshops, but it was amazing to hear the success story. So, that's what we would do with this summit, but also try to encourage cities to have their own little summit, to bring their own experts in and have that more meaningful community engagement and so on. So, I see this coalition, it's more work, but it's going to be great work. So, and I think everybody on our initial coalition is so passionate and so committed, because it's just, the benefits for everyone in South Carolina. It's a win-win, honestly. So I'm going to have to look up Play Coalition, or I'm calling you, Sarah.
Well, we are.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I can help you connect with them. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So Mary, I sent you a list early on in this Healthy Palmetto process. I was able to meet with a group around Every Kid Outdoors. And so it was mainly like national forests, state forests, people like that. And so make sure to go back to that list, because they were very interested in how to better promote the offerings that they have on state and national forest as well. They would probably be a good addition, coming from a little bit different perspective than maybe some of the other people on your group.
Absolutely. I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time today, for being here, for being present, and for the ideas that have already been generated, the connections that we can already see forming. And thank you to our Trails group for just seeing the value of this. Mary, you said it was a win-win. We're glad you see it that way. We very much feel that it's a win-win. So we're excited to just move forward with this and see how we can really make an impact in our state. So the the last thing I wanted to say was that this is recorded. And so I'm going to upload this recording into Teams as soon as possible. As well as if you're leaving here today and you're like, I've got a few more ideas kind of tickling the back of your brain, or you think of something tomorrow morning, we will continue to sort of debrief and dissect these presentations at our February 3rd meeting. So, please jot down if something comes to you later, like, oh, you know what, this might